So let's get back to our discussion about classes. Now that we understand methods and also we understand variables and their values, this would be a bit easier to understand. So remember when we talked about a dog object? A dog object can have an identity. Here we have Sherlock as the identity of the dog object. It can have attributes like color, age, and breed, and there can be many other attributes. It also has some behaviors named bark, run, sleep, eat, and it can have other behaviors. So basically, this can be created using a class, right? Whenever we want to create an object, we first have to create a class, and the class is the recipe of the object, or the class is a blueprint of the object. And once we create the class, we can then create as many objects of that class as we want. So if we want to create this dog object, we first need to create a dog class. And inside that dog class, the attributes would be some variables and the behaviors would be some methods. And that is the reason we had these brackets here, because remember that methods always have brackets, right? And in these brackets, you'll actually have some input, or maybe they can have no input, in which case they'll just be empty brackets, but the brackets need to be there. So the behaviors, each and every behavior is a method. Each and every attribute is a variable. And that is how a class can be constructed. So now let's try and create a dog class and see how we can structure it in code. So whenever you create a class, you have to create it in a separate file. And we'll see how to create a class in a separate file when we look at the code example. But let's look at how we can structure the code, and we'll write some pseudocode. All right. So we'll at first create a dog class. So we'll have to write class and then say dog. Now, whenever we create a class, the very first letter of the name of the class should be an uppercase letter. With methods, it was lowercase. With classes, it's uppercase. So that's the convention. All right, so we try to follow that. So let's say this is our dog class, and this is the file where we'll create our dog class in. Now, when you are creating the dog class, the very first thing that you will create are the attributes, right? So remember, a class has attributes. A class has a constructor, and or maybe constructors, and it has methods. All right, so what we already understand what methods are. We'll look at what constructors are. And now let's try and define a few attributes. So the first attribute that we thought that a dog could have is probably its color, right? So we can say string color, and that's it. We don't define we don't assign the value right here, because different objects created from this class will have different values for color, right? So we don't assign any value for it. Secondly, it might have an age, and age would be integer, right? So we can have age. And thirdly, it could have breed, right? So breed would be a string, and we can write breed as a string variable or a string attribute. Now we can also give it a name, and that would be a string as well. All right. Now this part would be reserved for the constructor, and we'll talk about constructor in a bit. But after we have defined the attributes and after we have also written the constructor, then we'll define its methods. And the methods can be, again, it won't be static here. Again, don't worry about access modifiers, but it'll be probably public, which is another access modifier, just like static. But don't worry about that right now. At first, we'll have some methods, right? The methods would be what? Bark at first. So maybe bark gives us a string output, let's say. Whenever we call the method bark, maybe a string gets printed, let's say wolf or something like that. So we can say string is the output type, and the name of the method is bark, and maybe we don't want any input there. All right, so whenever we call bark, we just want something to get printed or something to get returned, and at that point it returns, let's say, something like woof woof, right? So whenever you call the method bark, this gets returned in a string. Very simple example, a very simple behavior. Let's say you have a method called eat, right? And let's say the return type is nothing, void. So you don't have an input, you don't have a return type, but you have this method called eat. And whenever we call the method eat, maybe something gets printed out. So let's say system.out.println. We can print out dog has eaten. Done. So we can create these methods in this way underneath this part, underneath the constructor. And in the beginning, we define its attributes. So now let's say we have created the dog class. We have not written the constructor yet, and it is one of the most important parts of the class. But let's just say we have written the whole class, all right? So now we have the blueprint, or now we have the recipe to create dog objects. Now we can create as many different dog objects as we want. So how do we create a dog object? So this is a different file, right? This is a file of its own. We go to the main file, and in the main class, in the main method, we're trying to create our dog object. So now let's say we want to create our first dog object from this class. Now, how can we create a dog object? At first, we have to think of what we will call this object. So what is the reference to this object? The reference to this object that we want to create is, let's say, named Sherlock, right? And that's the name of the object. What is the type of this object? Whenever we create a variable, remember, we also define its type. So what is the type of this object? The type of this object is the name of the class. The type of this object is dog. So we say Sherlock is a new variable, and this variable is going to be of the type dog. Great. We say equal to, and then we say new. New means we are creating a new object for this variable. We're creating a new object, and we're going to store it in this variable. And this variable is able to store a new dog object because the type of this variable is dog. Great. So now we need to create a new dog object. And here is where we have to define its constructor. Because in order to create an object, we need to construct it from the class, right? And this is where the constructor comes in. Now, let's talk about the constructor first, and we'll see how we actually complete this statement. A constructor is just another method. How is it special? It's special because the name of the constructor is the same as the name of the class, and it also starts with a capital letter or an uppercase letter. Every other method's name starts with a lowercase letter, right? But with a constructor, the name of the constructor is the same as that of the class, and it starts with a capital letter or an uppercase letter. So we say dog, and then we have to define the different inputs that we want to put here. All right. So at first, let's say whenever we're creating a new dog, at first we want to input its name. Then we want to input its age, let's say. Then we want to input its color. And then we want to, let's say, input its breed. And when we input this in the constructor here, at that point, the dog object would be created. Let's say this is our 1, this is 2, this is 3 for us, and this is 4, right? So that is exactly what we want to put here, because this is the order in which we want to input the different variables or attributes. And when we input the attributes in this order, we want a new dog object to be created. So in that case, this is exactly what we're going to put here. So at first we'll say string input name, let's say. So whatever we put here is going to be a new variable, right? Or a new input. And this input would come here and would become this variable. We'll understand this a bit more in detail when we look at a couple of more examples, but let's go with this for now. So we have string input name in the beginning because we want the name to be there. And so the name itself is string, right? So the input name should also be string. Next, we want an integer that would give us the input age, right? And so this is an integer that is input age. The third thing would be a string that would be input color. And the fourth thing we wanted is also a string, and that will be input breed. And that becomes our constructor, right? So our constructor has the same name as the class. It starts with a capital letter, it starts with an uppercase letter, and it has inputs which we will use to create a new dog object. Great. So before looking at this, let's actually see what the statement would be to create this dog object. So the statement would be, let's complete this statement. This statement would be dog Sherlock equals, let's say, I'm just writing it here because we have more space here, equals new dog, because this is the constructor, right? And the constructor's signature. Remember signatures, right? So the constructor's signature is this, right? So exactly this is what we'll put it here. So we'll say new dog. Now we're putting in the constructor. The first thing is a string. So we want the dog's name to be, let's say, again, Sherlock. And you see, this Sherlock and this Sherlock are different. This Sherlock is the reference to the object, just like when you said int x. This x is the reference to the object, right? It's the reference to the variable. This is the reference to the variable. This is the string that is coming here for this attribute. So there are two different things. So the first thing that we input is Sherlock. The second thing that we input has to be an integer, right? And it would be the age. So the next thing would be, let's say, I don't know, 8 years. So we'll just say 8. The third thing will be an input color. And that color is a string. So we need to input a string. So let's say it's white. And the fourth thing is the breed, right? And the breed for Sherlock would be another string. And let's say that'll be Labrador, right? And our statement is finished. So when we write this statement, a dog object will be created, and that dog object's reference would be Sherlock. That dog object would have a name attribute named Sherlock. It will have an age attribute 8. It would have a color attribute of white, and it will have a breed of Labrador. But these did not yet get connected to the dog object using the class. In order to do that, we need to connect this, because you see, this variable is coming here. This variable is coming here. This variable coming here. And this variable is coming here, right? But these variables are different. Our actual attributes are these, right? These variables are different. They are something that we put from the outside. A user who's trying to create an object using your class is inputting these values. So they come here first. Now we need to connect them with this, right? This input name needs to be connected to this one. This input age needs to be connected to this age. This input color needs to be connected to this color. And this input breed needs to be connected to this breed. So for this, we do something interesting. What we write is the keyword this. And we'll understand what this keyword actually means. This is a keyword, all right? A keyword is words that are already defined in Java. So this is a keyword. And when you actually write it in code, you'll see that this becomes bold blue color, right? The other things just remain normal text. So this is a keyword. And we'll actually understand what this keyword actually means. So we'll say this dot name, which refers to this, equals to whatever was input from the user. Input name. All right, this is an underscore, not a hyphen. So I just wanted to make that clear. Sorry about the quality of the handwriting. But this is the first statement we write inside our constructor method. And then we also say this dot age equals input age. We then say this dot color, and these variables are the same as these variables, right? So we have to name them the same way. So this dot name means this dot age means this dot color means this. And in this variable, because we did not define any value for these variables, right? Now the inputs that are coming from the outside, those get assigned to these variables. So this name becomes Sherlock because input name is basically Sherlock, right? Sherlock came into input name, and that now when the user put Sherlock here, this actually came here. Input name became Sherlock. Now input name has Sherlock stored in it, and then this dot name equals input name makes Sherlock being stored in name. Now in the same way, the user put 8 from the outside. The user put 8. 8 came here to input age. The value of input age became 8. And now input age has 8 in it. And 8 gets assigned to this variable age, which is actually this variable. So now that is how we assign the value of this attribute for this dog, okay? Or this dog. So this dot color, again, would become input color. And then we'll also say this dot breed equals input breed. And now you have created a constructor method that takes input from the outside and then assigns those inputs to the different attributes of this object in using this class. And so this is the constructor. Every time you write this statement, a new object is created because you're using this new keyword, right? So a new object is being created, and that new object will have different values for these different attributes. So in the next video, we'll see how we can create multiple objects from the same class.